The first cause argument is one of the oldest supposedly rational arguments for God, and while it has existed for around 2,000 years in some form or another, Christians adapted it via Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century. In his Summa Theologica he wrote, "If that by which it is put in motion be itself put in motion, then this also must needs be put in motion by another, and that by another again. But this cannot go on to infinity, because then there would be no first mover, and consequently no other mover, seeing that subsequent movers move only inasmuch as they are put in motion by the first mover, as the staff moves only because it is put in motion by the hand. Therefore it is necessary to arrive at a first mover put in motion by no other, and this everyone understands to be God." Christians today try to utilize modern cosmology, the Big Bang Theory, in order to try and scientifically vindicate Aquinas' statement. The Big Bang posits there was a beginning of time and space, and because nothing can't bring about something, voila, God. So what's wrong with this line of reasoning? Even though I dumbed it down, it's basically just that. And the reasons, what's wrong with it, there are a lot of things that's wrong with it. I'll talk about 2 or 3. Let's start with Aquinas' jump in logic near the end of his argument. Okay, assume there's a first mover. Therefore it's God, namely his God. He jumps from a first mover of which no one has any knowledge of, to it being God, and not just any God, the Christian God. There's no kind of rationale here. He simply just states that everyone understands it. That's quite a big unjustified leap. His logical conclusion would be that there's a first mover, but he jumps into the realm of faith to make any claim about the nature of this first mover, and we see every kind of monotheistic religion doing that. I mean, Plato and Aristotle did it before they weren't really monotheists, but there's an Islamic version of the same argument and just argues for their God because of the stuff it says in their holy book, and Christians do the same thing with their holy book. So that's kind of where the faith part jumps in, even if we were to assume this argument was valid, which it's not. So we can't really know about the nature of this first mover. We just know via his argument that there's a first mover, assuming it's correct. But now let's move on into modern cosmology, which is kind of my strong point. Those who try to justify the first cause argument scientifically are doing themselves a disservice. To claim that space, time, the whole universe began with the Big Bang singularity 13.7 billion years ago is to misunderstand the scope of the Big Bang theory and to ignore quantum cosmology. So what's wrong with their understanding of the Big Bang theory that leads them to falsely believe it backs up Aquinas' argument? Well, the Big Bang model was a result of applying general relativity to cosmology. I mean, the first few people who kind of developed the Big Bang model were Lemaitre, which was a priest, I believe he was Belgian, and before that Alexander Friedman. And they both used general relativity to come up with this dynamic universe. And general relativity does an excellent job making sense of the universe on large scales when gravity behaves in a very classical and well-defined way, that is, in a non-quantum way. However, if we arrive at very small regions of space where the behavior of gravity is not defined classically due to singularities and other mathematical anomalies, applying general relativity would be a misapplication. In these very small regions, a quantum theory of gravity is needed because quantum effects dominate in these areas. If we go back towards the early moments of our universe, general relativity tells us we will reach a singularity of space-time. But, as we just learned, this is a misapplication of general relativity. We need quantum gravity to tell us about the beginning. And although quantum gravity is still in its infancy, all quantum gravitational theories agree on one point when applied to cosmology: that singularities do not exist, and thusly our universe existed prior to that singularity point. In fact, to this day, modern cosmological research has not found a true beginning which would even require a prime mover. Only a misunderstanding of the Big Bang's scope leads to the prime mover claim. So, without a scientific beginning to start from, the first cause argument hops back into the solely philosophical realm. However, now that the Big Bang portion of the argument is gone, could we just not argue that the universe and not some unseen prime mover gave rise to what we see today? Aquinas, in his argument, arbitrarily drew the line with God. Why not just draw it with the universe? The universe just existing is not only a very viable possibility, it is also much more reasonable than assuming a God because, well, we know the universe exists, we live in it. God isn't only unobservable, he supposedly exists outside of our universe and is entirely unknowable except via divine revelation, which, of course, is not a reasonable means of acquiring knowledge. Not something that anyone can test, certainly. So we live in a universe that moves, but is itself unmoved, not a mover God who is himself unmoved. Aquinas' argument against an infinite universe is this problem of infinite regression mentioned above, that the universe has a cause, which was itself cause ad infinitum all the way. And so people say, well, this is an argument against the universe existing forever. Well, the problem with this claim of infinite digression is that the universe, which is space-time, need not have a cause. We have seen this scientifically from quantum cosmology, but let's take a look at it solely in the philosophical realm. The universe does not exist within time, because time is a dimension that makes up the universe. Causing the universe would be essentially causing time, which makes no sense. The dimension of time cannot come into existence because coming into existence implies time, and we're stuck in a circle of nonsense. In fact, the only logical idea that can come about here is that the dimension of time is uncaused, which seems to be implied by, well, definition. If time is uncaused and time is an aspect of our universe, then the universe in some sense was uncaused. Space as a dimension is a slightly different matter, but current quantum understanding of space doesn't allow for space of zero dimension. Space in quantum gravity always has a finite size, never zero. In loop quantum gravity, this is due to spin networks. In string theory, it's due to the inherent size of strings. Either way, space can never take on a zero size. Space and time have always existed in one form or another. Thusly, our universe, which is comprised of these two types of dimensions, always has as well. In the end, the first cause argument winds up to be a dismal failure. It is not backed by modern science, it violates Occam's razor, and it makes a huge logical jump from prime mover to name your god. If there are good arguments for God, this is definitely not one of them.